Welcome to another video tutorial. In this video, we're going to take a quick look at how to create custom inventory widgets for containers. So if you want to have a container that has more or less items than the default item container widget, then that's what this video is going to cover. Now, I have to admit that when I first attempted this video, I had an idea in mind for the method I was going to teach, and then I stumbled across the very option that I thought wasn't even possible in the program. So it turns out you can actually do it in the program, so you actually don't even really need this tutorial. However, that being said, I've decided to still do the video and cover the method that I was going to cover because it still has its place, still has its uses, and it might be useful for people to know. So rather than just scrap the video idea entirely because there's an easier way of doing it, I figured I would still cover it because then it just gives you more options as developers to which one might suit your purposes. So with that said, let's quickly go into how to first of all set up a container. So assuming you know the basics, what you do is you have your map. You have an object which you want to be your container. So let's say, for example, this treasure chest here, you place it down in your map. Let's just quickly put the nav grid back. And then you'd select the object and you would scroll down in the entity properties section and you would find where it says item container and you turn that on. That then allows you to add the items that you would like to have in the container. So if I just add a handful of items quickly, let's just do one more, I can then save the game and quickly run it. And then if we click on the chests, we get our chest items. So this widget here is what comes up by default when you use a container. And you can see it's got the items in it. We can take them and put them into our inventory. So where is this coming from, this widget here? If we go back to the editor and we go to the UI editor, this is the player's inventory. This is what it looks like. And this is the item container. So this is the widget that pops up when you open a container, and it has 2 rows of 5 item inventory slots. So if you wanted to create your own, what you would do is you'd click the Add Widget button, give it a name. So let's say we want to make a smaller chest than this, because it looks like it's quite a small chest. So let's say it only holds 5 items, let's say. So what we want to do is we want to create one of these that's just a single row. So what we do is we click Add Widget. We'll call it Tiny Box, something like that. And go to the Widget Tools section, and item storage slots are the things you need to put on your widget. So we'll just drag 5 of those, probably right next to one another. And then we'll space them out if we need to, but it looks like they'll fit. And then what we'll do is we'll just resize the whole widget to something like that. So there's a really teeny tiny box. And we can even call this, although the name doesn't matter, and I'll show you why. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually remove the title bar text, because if you look at the item container, you'll notice that doesn't have any text either. I'm not even sure if, yeah, the inventory does have text, but you'll notice the item container doesn't have text. And there's a reason for that, which we'll get to in a second. So we're going to do the same thing with our tiny box. We're going to leave it without text. I will, however, put a close button on there as well, even though for some reason, I'm not sure if it's a Steam Deck thing or if it's a general thing. I'll need to check this when I get to my Windows machine and verify this, but for some reason when you use the containers, it doesn't have the close buttons on either the inventory or the container, which you'll see in a second. But as I say, I'm not sure if that's just a Steam Deck thing, because that's what I'm using at the moment, or if it's a general issue. But nonetheless, it's not a major thing, but you'll see in a minute. So what we've done is we created a custom widget. We've called it TinyBox. We've put some item slots on it, just 5, because it's going to be a really tiny inventory. And we've removed the title from the widget, and we've given it a close button. Okay. You can obviously set the initial position. Is it center, top left, that sort of thing. So maybe let's have it open center left, let's say. And then you save that. And then what you do is you go to the map editor and you select your container. And this is the thing that I assumed was not possible, but it's right here. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, so I don't even need to do this video, but I'll do it nonetheless. So what you do is you just basically drop this down and you select TinyBox. So now this chest is going to use that widget as its container widget rather than the default one, which is that one here. So instead of using this one, we've set it to use this one by changing this to TinyBox. Where it says container name, this is the text that's going to appear in this bit here, which is why we leave it blank. And you'll notice it's blank here as well, because this bit gets populated by the text that you fill in here. So let's now call this TinyBox. So that will appear, and I'll put in brackets as well, entity, just so it's clear that this text is coming from this text box here, not from anywhere else. Now we've set this container to only have 5 inventory slots. So that's fine at the moment. We've got 4 things inside. We could add another, let's add the shield in. Now what happens if you add more than the slots? So for example, we've got 5 items in there. What happens if we add a 6th item? So what's missing? I don't think there's a gold coin in there. Let's just have a quick look. No. It goes in, okay? However, you're not going to ever see that because it's a 6th item and there's only 5 slots, okay? So the game doesn't actually stop you, or the engine, to be more precise, doesn't actually stop you from adding beyond the amount of slots in the widget, because I don't think it, at this point, knows how many slots there's going to be. But just obviously understand that if you do add more than the widget can show, those items are going to be lost, okay? However, let's just quickly test how this looks. So we'll save and load. And if we open the chest, here we go. There's our little teeny tiny inventory, TinyBox with entity in the brackets, just to show that it really is coming from the container name bit. And you can see there's 5 items. There's no gold coin. Okay, and if I take everything out, there's still no way to get to the gold coin. And if I close the inventory and open it again, there's still no gold coin. So it's completely lost. Okay, so even though we put it into the box in the map editor, because there weren't enough slots, you lose the item. So just be mindful that if you put more items into this list than your assigned widget can actually hold, the engine doesn't currently warn you of that. Perhaps it should, but that's up to Justin to sort that out. But at the very least, just understand that if you do put more items in than your assigned widget can hold, right now you're going to lose those items. They're not going to be in there. So just obviously double check that. But you should still be able to stack things. So for example, if I remove, let's say the sword, so now there is 5 items. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I could stack a couple of apples and I could stack a whole load of gold coins, let's say 20. So now if we play the game, we've got all our items, and we've got a stack of coins and a stack of apples. Okay, so that's all working fine. So obviously, if we wanted to have a larger container, so let's go back to our UI editor and let's create another widget called large box. This could then hold, let's say, more than 10. So let's just quickly drag in as many slots as we want. And obviously the great thing about creating your own widgets is you don't just have to have item slots. You could have text in here. You could have, you could display various different variable properties, how many items are in the chest, that sort of thing. It's entirely up to you how you design these, but for now we'll just cover this as a basic sort of inventory slot widget. You get the idea of how you could customize these a bit more. So let's say this is our larger widget, our larger inventory. Let's also make this a bit smaller, and then we can I think that's fine. Let's make it center left like the other one. Save this, and then what we can do is we can go to the map editor. We can grab, let's say, this chest. It looks much bigger, so we'll place this one on this side. Same thing again, we'll just connect the grid back up, select it, turn on the container, set its widget to the large box, and then we can add pretty much every one of these and still have room left over because I don't have as many items as there are slots. I guess I could add a couple of duplicates, so let's add a couple more swords in like that. Okay, so let's save that and test that out. Oh, I forgot to give it a name, but never mind, it will just be blank for now. So here's our small chest, which only has a limited number of slots. Here's our large chest, which suddenly has, a lot more room. So that's how you can make containers have their own widgets of varying sizes and various layouts, whatever you want to do. See what I mean about the missing crosses on the inventory when you open it via a interaction with the chest. But what's interesting is if I just press I to bring up the inventory, it has a cross. And if I bring down the console and I type show widget, was it tiny box? It has the cross on it. But if I actually interact, if I bring up the widget via the container properties, it doesn't have any close button. But it's not a huge problem because at the end of the day, you can either just press I to close it or you can click this button. So it's not like a huge end of the world type thing, but it's just a bit odd. But as I say, I don't know if that's a Steam Deck thing or a general issue. But I won't know that till I can confirm that on a different machine. Anyway, so that would almost be the end of the video because that's as much as you really need to do in order to basically have containers with different amounts of slots. However, that being said, I would now like to share with you the other approach that I was going to originally cover because I didn't think you could actually set a container widget. So, because I didn't think you could do that, I came up with another way of doing this, which, when you think about it now, is a bit redundant. However, there is still a use for it, and I would like to explain why. So, it's another way of solving a particular problem that's currently in RPG in a Box, which is what happens if you want to actually script your chests. So, for example, let's delete the big one for now, and let's go back to this small one. Okay, so we've set this up. We've given it a container widget, we've given it a container name, and we've given it some items. That's all working fine. What we actually want to do is we want to embellish this container a bit more. I want to give it a script. I want to have it so that when I interact with it, the first time I ever interact with this box, I want a message to pop up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to quick script. It already gives me a message, which is good. But what I'm going to very quickly do is do an if. Now I haven't set up this property yet, so I'll just quickly do that afterwards. But let's just say opened is, if global property opened is equal to false, then I want to display a message that says you unlock the chest, something like that. And then we want obviously it to, at that point, open the chest, right? We want it to show the contents. And then we can say end. So we just want that message to pop up only if we haven't opened it before. We should obviously also set afterwards that it has been opened. So it won't do that every single time. And let me just quickly go to the game configuration, global properties, add one called, that should be a Boolean, opened, and starts false. So if we now run the game, we should have a chest where when we interact with it the first time, it should show a message, then show us the contents of the box, and then every other time we interact with it, it should just show us the contents of the box. Okay, so let's use the box. Great, so we unlock the chest. But we have a problem. Although our inventory has popped up, the box contents have not. And this is currently an issue with RPG in a Box, where if you put a script on a container where the script has a display message or any other kind of UI element, it interferes with the container UI and it doesn't pop up. And if I close the container and interact with it again, now it does pop up though, because the script now technically isn't working anymore because the global property is now true, it didn't show the message, therefore it didn't interfere with the UI. So the next time you interact with the chest, it basically just acts just like a normal container. It's almost as if it doesn't have a script on it, because it basically ignores that whole script because the if at that point was not valid. So now it works, but we want it to work the first time as well. We want it to first show the message and then we want it to bring all of this up. So how do we do that? Well, there's two ways of doing that. I've already covered two of them. Refer to my Skyrim containers video and my scripted containers video, where I show two ways of solving this particular problem. But what I'm about to show you in this video is a third way that you could solve this problem. And actually, I think it's probably a better way. It's probably the best way out of the three of solving this problem. So that's why I've decided to still do this video, because the method I was going to teach for how to use widgets for custom inventories, for custom containers, that method can still be used to fix this particular problem. And it's also, I think, a very useful thing to know. So what we're basically going to do is, instead of putting the items inside the container, so at the moment, if we click this, we've got this container set up, right? And it uses this widget, and it's got this text, and it's got these items in it, okay? What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to turn this off, because it doesn't work if you've got a script on it. So if it's really important that your chest does something first or does something all the time, no matter, whatever it is you want to do, like for example, display a message, then you're not going to be able to use the item container at the moment until Justin makes it so that you can. But until then, if you want to have a container that has a message or something pop up, then you're going to have to forego this option, okay? However, we can still have it work as a container, because instead of putting the items inside the container, what we can actually do is we can put the items inside this widget, okay? So what we need to do is, because we're not going to be using the container option anymore, we'll actually put the text in. So this is going to be tiny crates, let's say, just so it's clear that it's a different text. and we'll leave it set up as it is. Now, obviously, at the moment, it would be nice if you could do this in the future, but at the moment you can't select an item slot and then be able to pick from available items to put into those slots. At the moment, we can't do that in the user interface. Be nice if that's a future feature, but at the moment it's not. So we're going to have to do this a different way. So the way we do that is we take a note of this widget ID. It's called tiny_box, okay? And what we're going to do is we're just going to save the changes I've just made here, and we're going to go to the script editor, and we're going to add into our startup script, because it's the best place as any to do it. You could obviously, in fact, this is probably the best way to do it, is to do execute script in your startup, because then that allows you to sort of separate out your scripts. So we'll have an execute script called populate chest. And obviously all your chests could be populated by this script if you had multiple different containers. So we'll apply and save that. And obviously that script doesn't exist at the moment, but I can now close this and create a new one called populate chest. So what this is going to do is populate this widget. So what you do is you type widget, square brackets, the ID of it, so tiny box, and then dot element, and then the ID of the element. So the elements are basically each inventory slot. So this is basically the first slot. So this element 001 is referring to this slot here. You can see the ID of it here. Okay. And so going back to our script, we type widget tinybox.element01.item, and then that refers to the item inside the slot. Now at the moment there isn't one, but what we can do is we can then say item equals, and then we can give it an item ID. So for example, item 0001. So that means that on startup, item 001 is going to be placed into that slot. So what is item 001? Well, if you go to your items tab, the ID of your items is here. So we've just said 1, so that's the sword. So we've just put the sword via this script into the first slot of this widget. Okay. So what we can do is we can copy this and paste it 5 times, because that's how many slots there are. So obviously this is going to be slot 2, slot 3, slot 4, slot 5. And obviously we could put item 2 into slot 2, item 3. It doesn't have to be, these specific items, but, makes sense just for a tutorial, just to put the items in like that. So if we apply and save that, that's our script, and that will run at startup, because our startup script will execute this script, and this script will just populate this widget, these items, with the items we set. So it's going to have the sword, the armor, the shield, the apple, and the gold coin. Now at the moment it's only going to have one of each. Okay. Now at the moment as well, this although we've told the widget to be populated, it's not going to show. So now what we need to do is we also need to tie this widget to the chest. So what you do is you select the chest, we go back to our script, the one that wasn't working initially. If global property opened equals false, then display message you unlock the chest. And what we then want to do is we want to show widget, and this is tiny box. And then obviously because we've turned in fact, we can just put this at the end of the at the end of the if. Why won't that go down? There you go. Because we want this to happen no matter what. But first we want this to happen. If it's false, show that text, set it to true, and then no matter how many times you use it, we want it to afterwards show this widget. Validate that, say okay. So now this will function. Let's just make sure everything is saved. Now this should function exactly as we want it to work. So we use the chest, we get the text come up first, and then we also get the widget. Now, obviously, what happens this time is we don't get our inventory, so we'll want to show that as well. The nice thing about this approach is we also get the close button, yeah? But you can see the items are inside. So let's just quickly improve the script by also showing our inventory. So go back to the scripts, not the script, the chest container, show widget tiny box, and I think there's a function for inventory. Let me just check. Yes, show inventory. Let's try. We might have to do it the other way around. I'm not sure, but we'll just check. There you go. It's a bit knacky. Let me just check that is my inventory. Just a bit dubious. Just check it. I'll put these in, close everything, and then close that, bring up my inventory. Yeah. So it's a bit knacky. So what I might do instead is, instead of doing this function, I will show widget inventory. See if that works. We need to obviously verify that that is going to be connected to the player. So we'll just check that. So that brings them both up. But what I need to check is, if I then bring up my inventory, does it have these items? Hopefully it does, and in which case this is how you do it. So we'll close these, and if I press I, great. So I've got the items. So that's how you do it. So don't use show inventory, because it sort of messes up the interface a little bit. But if you just show both widgets, that's how you can. So tiny box is obviously the custom one. And obviously, if you've got a custom inventory widget, you would put your custom inventory ID in there as well. If you're using the default one, then it's called inventory. And you can find the default names. They're listed here. Okay. So the last thing to cover is, what if you want multiple items? So for example, going back to our population script where we're populating the chest, we've got this is the apple and this is the gold coin. But what if you want more than one? What if you want 10 apples and 50 gold coins or something like that? So to do that, what you do is you type widget, the ID, so tinybox.element, and then obviously the element ID. So in this case, it's 4 because it's the one that we've just put the apple in the line above. And you type dot count. So instead of dot item, dot count equals, and then let's put 6 apples into the into that slot, and then we'll copy this line, paste it, and instead of putting the item in again, we'll change the count to 30. So we'll have 30 gold coins. If we apply and save that and run the game again, we get our text on display message, and then we get our 2UI pop up, and there's our 6 apples and 30 gold coins. So that's how you also put more than one. Obviously these have to be stackable, so make sure your items in your item editor are set to stackable with their limit. So gold coin, for example, is 50. Otherwise, you know, they won't stack. But anyway, so, and obviously if you want, again, smaller containers or larger containers, again, you would just have various different widgets of different sizes. So here's the tiny crate one, for example, but I could also populate this one as well, the exact same thing. So going back to the UI editor, sorry, not the UI editor, the script editor, to the populate chests, I could then copy this, for example, and instead of tiny box, this would be large box, and then obviously element 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You'd have to obviously do all of the elements one by one. So, you do have to sort of populate them manually, but then, you're doing that anyway by dragging them into the list. So, but this way you're sort of doing it by populating them via a script. And obviously you could automate this to some degree as well. You could for loop through populating all the elements automatically. So you could iterate through the different element IDs using a, increasing variable as you loop through, if that makes sense. So your for loop would have a variable that +1 every time, and you would use that variable as the ID of the element. Yeah. So, and obviously you'd have to do the same with the ID of your item as well. So, but there are ways of automating this, so it doesn't have to be all scripted line by line by line. If you just have to think about it. But this is in essence how you can script the population of a widget. And then the nice thing about that is the widget itself will store the items, and then all you have to do is just show that widget. So you can have any container show that widget. You can have NPCs show that widget if you want to give them a browsable inventory, And the great advantage to it as well is that it fixes the display message issue, which you just saw, where if you have a script on a chest that has a display message, it doesn't then show the container. Well, this will work. You can show the widget afterwards. And as long as the widget has the items in, then effectively it acts as the container. So hopefully this video has been interesting and useful. I'd imagine that 9 times out of 10, you're probably just going to use the inbuilt item container widget option here because it's there, and I didn't realize it was there. But there you go. Shows you sometimes you can miss these things. But nonetheless, I did cover the other way of doing it as well, the manual scripted way of doing it, just to give you more options. You choose which one you prefer, whichever one suits your needs. But I hope this video has been useful and interesting. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to ask on the Discord. But for now, that'll wrap up this video. Thanks for watching.